This wasn't a minor setback. This was the kind of trap that swallows machines whole, deep in the Yukon. That's exactly what Tony Beets and his crew were staring at. An excavator stuck in a pit of thick, unforgiving muck. There's nothing to even say about this 'cause how big of it is. I agree, yeah, just moments before it had been a working machine. Now it was a ticking time bomb. And if they didn't act fast, they'd lose the entire thing. But when you're in the Beets crew, you don't just panic. You pull out every trick in the book. Because out here, a few seconds can mean the difference between $1 million haul and $1 million mistake. Tony didn't waste time. He brought out the big guns. 2 excavators, the 750 and the 480, ready to do the impossible. Their job was to latch onto the bucket of the sunken 349 and drag it out before the mud swallowed it whole. Monica climbed in. It was risky, but calculated. She extended the boom arm while the other excavators pulled with precision. The suction of the mud was fierce, like quicksand, but worse. With the suction broken, Mitch and Brennan have one more shot at pulling the excavator free. If the engine went under, well, that would be game over. But Tony's team didn't let it get that far. Monica moved. The machines pulled. Everyone held their breath. Then movement. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't fast. But the 349 started to rise inch by inch. Against all odds, they did it. Like threading a needle with steel fingers, the team pulled the excavator out unharmed. No one got hurt. Nothing was destroyed. And Tony, he just smiled. Disaster dodged. Now back to business. Gold mining is not a business that waits for you to be ready. It doesn't care if your crew is exhausted, if your equipment is strained, or if the weather is turning against you. It operates on its own unpredictable schedule, and when it pays, it can pay all at once without warning. As the season inched toward its bitter icy end, that is just cold water. I mean, that don't mean we bust it up, and then we can go ding. Tony Beets had his eyes fixed on one thing only: the gold. The goal was clear. Get as much as possible out of the ground before the Yukon turned solid and unforgiving. The clock was ticking. Winter was creeping closer. And with it, the threat of everything freezing to a halt. But Tony wasn't slowing down, not even close. At this final stage, he had 4 gold plants running simultaneously. It was a full-scale offensive. His attempt to drain every last flake of value from the ground before the season shut them down for good. 4 chances to push past his target. 4 chances to either triumph or fall behind. The first site to report was Indian River. The gold began to roll in starting with the dredge. The results were modest but respectable. Rick's Indian River operation needs to contribute 110 ounces a week. 10, 25, 60, 75, 90 were over 100. The final weight came in at 69.02 ounces. Considering it had only run for about half a week, the output wasn't disappointing. It wasn't extraordinary either, but it was solid. A promising start. Next came the shaker deck. As the team gathered to weigh the gold, the numbers climbed steadily. 60 ounces, then 70, then 80. Finally, the scale stopped at 85.760. That was a stronger result, better than expected. They were gaining momentum. Then came the third plant, the one Tony had dubbed Sursal. And this one was a beast. The weight kept climbing, breaking through the hundreds with ease. By the time it settled, it had produced 173.96 ohms of gold. That haul shifted the energy in the room. This wasn't just a decent run. This was a statement. The Indian River was delivering. When they added the 3 totals together, the final yield from Indian River reached 328.74 ohms. To stay on track for Indian River's 100 target, that single location alone had pushed Tony far closer to his overall goal for the season. His personal benchmark was 2,500 ounces. After just this round, he was well within reach. and there was still one more plant to go. The final numbers would come from the trommel stationed at Paradise Hill. This machine had been running hard all season, and expectations were sky-high. Everyone watched the scales in silence as the final count began. It didn't take long for the numbers to soar. 300 ounces, then 310. Eventually, the scale landed at 319.40 ounces. Yeah, but we still got a pan of gold. So, let's see where we're at. To stay on track for his 1,000 ounces, Rick needs around 100 ounces. There's 50 already. 70. 80. Oh there. Oh yeah, it broke 100. You broke 120. That one load just from the trommel added nearly 650 ounces to the total. The value of that gold over $1 million. $1 million. When the dust settled and the final numbers were tallied, the total gold recovered across the season reached 3,540 ounces. A number so heavy it seemed to tip the scales of reality. It wasn't just about ounces anymore. It was about impact. The gold was valued at over $6 million. $6 million worth of gold pulled from the earth by Tony Beets and his team in one brutal, relentless season. This wasn't a payday. It wasn't a victory lap. But Tony didn't celebrate the way most people would after a win like this. There were no loud cheers, no grand displays, just a nod, a glance, a breath, because he knew what it took. Every single one of those 3,540 ounces came at cost. At the boundary cut extension, Sluifer runs twice as much dirt, so Parker needs it to produce twice as much gold. Well, we're going for 200 ounces this week, but this don't look like no 200-o. It was paid in long days, deep mud, freezing winds, and mechanical failures. It was paid in grease-covered hands and sleep-deprived nights. It was paid in risk, and risk doesn't always pay out. But this time it did. This wasn't about chance. It was never luck. This was the result of grit, of timing, of knowledge, and of pushing forward when most people would have called it quits. Tony knew that, and deep down, his whole crew knew it too. The season had officially come to an end. The machines were quiet. The plants were being shut down one by one. The sounds of roaring engines and clanking steel were replaced with the hush of departure and the weight of reflection. The once bustling camp now stood still, wrapped in the early whispers of winter. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. They weren't about gold totals or broken parts anymore. They were about the future. Kevin, Tony's son, was thinking ahead. He wasn't just reflecting. He was planning. It looks close until you stand right here. I think your gearbox is too high in the front. Okay, you got the ring replaced. It looks like Mike and Dee. We did that the other day. Put that in place. Just put this on. He and Faith weren't content to simply follow the blueprint laid out for them. They wanted to build something of their own. A new operation, a fresh start, not a rejection of the past, but an evolution of it. They wanted to put their own stamp on the Yukon soil. Tony didn't fight the idea. He didn't give a long speech or try to change their minds. Instead, he did what a seasoned father and miner does. He listened. Then he told them to go where they'd be happiest. That kind of freedom doesn't come easy. It's earned through years of trust, work, and weathering the worst together. Of course, not everything was up in the air. The lease they were eyeing was the same one Tony used, and the royalty agreement that would be up to Minnie, Tony's wife, to negotiate. Because in the Beets family, even new beginnings come with deep roots. Still, no one could ignore what this season had cost. It had been one of the most expensive undertakings Tony had ever endured. Between the fuel, equipment, crew hours, and setbacks, the numbers had added up quickly. And yet, despite that, he didn't see it as a failure. If anything, the challenges made the team stronger, more precise, more determined to push even harder next time. They didn't come out of this season broken. They came out sharper, tougher, and more dangerous to every stubborn ounce of gold left underground. Because Tony Beets isn't the kind of man who gets scared off by a hard season. But I think Tommy's got a hard time giving up the control. He's a micromanager. It'd be always good to have Kevin back. I mean, it's a family operation. Setbacks don't stop him. They sharpen him. And just like that, the planning begins again. There will be new leases to sign, new ground to test, new obstacles to overcome. There's no guarantee that the next season will be any easier, but that's not the point. The goal is the same as it's always been, to find gold and take it from the earth before the ground freezes again. Because once you've seen what $6 million worth of gold looks like in the pan, you don't walk away. Kevin understands that now more than ever. His path might take him in a different direction, but his foundation was forged in the same fires. There will be no excuses, no shortcuts, just boots in the mud and the relentless pursuit of gold. The family bond is still solid, but the ambitions have started to stretch. What once was one man's dream is now a shared legacy branching outward. The Beets name, it's no longer just Tony's. It belongs to everyone who has earned it under the punishing northern sun, each with their own calluses, their own story, and now their own vision.